It's okay. I'm right here. Don't be afraid.
Stay with me. Don't be afraid. We're here now. Please, someone help us.
The sirens wailed through Saint Helena like a storm made of metal and breath. The emergency room was chaos incarnate. Monitors screaming, stretchers rolling, nurses shouting for gauze, doctors shouting for silence. A fluorescent light flickered above the trauma bay like a nervous pulse. And then came the silence, a kind that pressed against the walls and made every heartbeat sound like guilt. The little girl on the operating table had stopped breathing, 5 years old, pink ribbons in her hair, now stained dark. Someone whispered, "Time of death," but the rest dissolved into static. The young surgeon, pale and trembling, let the scalpel fall. A nurse turned away to hide her tears. The overhead lamp clicked off with a hollow sound that felt final. And in the corner, a man in faded green coveralls quietly pushed a mop bucket across the floor. Over the coveralls, a navy apron hung neat, tied with the tidy patience of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He didn't look like he belonged there. His hair was cropped short, streaked with dust. His sleeves were rolled high, his hands steady as if nothing around him could shake the rhythm he carried inside. The patch on his chest said, "Turner," the fabric frayed from too many washes. When he knelt to wipe the crimson footprints near the table, a doctor snapped, voice raw with exhaustion. "What are you doing? We haven't even finished the report." The man didn't look up. He just wrung the mop, pressed it to the tile, and said softly, "Child's blood lingers the longest, doctor. I just don't want this place to remember too clearly." No one spoke. The hum of the fluorescent light returned, and in that strange, sacred quiet, something in the room shifted, as if the world had paused to breathe again. Eli Turner had worked the night shift for 2 years, not because it paid better, it didn't, but because night meant fewer voices, fewer eyes, and more silence to keep him company. His locker was wedged between the supply closet and the janitor sink. Inside, among spare gloves and detergent tablets, was a drawing, crumpled, taped, precious. A stick figure holding a mop, drawn in thick blue crayon. Beneath it, written in crooked letters, "My dad keeps the world clean." Every time Eli changed into his uniform, he looked at that drawing first. It was his morning prayer, though he lived by nights. When others joked about his job, he just smiled. "Saving lives isn't always about scalpels," he would say. "Sometimes it's about what comes after." He never told them what he meant, that he had once held the pulse of a dying soldier in his hands, that he had watched light fade from eyes too young to be tired. Now, he kept this place clean, sterile, silent, as if by doing so, he could repay some unspoken debt. At 3:14 a.m., a metal tray clattered in the hallway. A young doctor, her hair sticking to her temples, cursed softly under her breath. Eli glanced up, but didn't move closer. He had learned the rhythm of grief. It was like a heart monitor, chaotic, then flat, then slow recovery. You didn't interrupt it, you just stayed close enough that silence could do its work. When his mop hit the light, it shimmered, a pale reflection of the room's sorrow. Eli paused, watching it fade. He thought of his son, sleeping at his mother's farmhouse outside the city. The boy would wake at dawn and feed the chickens, like his mother used to. He missed the sound of small footsteps on old wood floors. He missed laughter in a house that didn't echo. But here, amid the antiseptic smell and fluorescent cold, he had found a different kind of purpose. Not saving lives, but guarding the spaces left behind by those who couldn't be saved. He didn't pray anymore. He just worked. And somehow, that was its own form of mercy. Outside, the rain thickened. Ambulances kept arriving. Saint Helena's night was far from over. But for Eli, this was how redemption looked. Not with medals or headlines, but with a mop gliding over blood until it disappeared, and a man whispering to no one, "Rest now. You're safe." And when the dawn began to creep through the high windows, painting the wet floor gold, Eli straightened his back, exhaled, and looked toward the next room. Because someone would need him again. Not to speak, not to teach, but simply to stay. St. Helena's night shift was built on silence. The hum of fluorescent light, the low rhythm of heart monitors, the sound of someone trying not to cry behind a curtain. That was the music Eli Turner worked to. He preferred it that way. The quiet. The daylight shift was too bright, too full of questions. The night, at least, didn't ask who he used to be. In the janitor's locker, above a shelf of bleach and gloves, hung a child's drawing. "My dad keeps the world clean." The crayon lines were crooked, but to Eli, it was scripture. The hallway lights buzzed overhead. He wrung out his mop, gloved hands moving in rhythm. It was muscle memory. The same precision he once used to wrap a field dressing or count a pulse. 2 nurses passed by. "That guy never talks," one whispered. "Maybe he's got nothing left to say," the other replied. Eli smiled faintly. They weren't wrong. Hours passed before something broke the calm. A crash in the trauma bay, followed by the rising panic of a young doctor's voice. Dr. Lena Cruz. New, brilliant, untested. A patient had coded. She'd lost him. Now she sat outside the OR, back to the wall, gloves still on, eyes staring at nothing. Eli walked past, then stopped. He turned, went to the vending machine, and returned with a cup of hot cocoa. He set it beside her. "You don't drink coffee after loss," he said quietly. "Makes the hands shake worse." Lena blinked, startled. "Who told you that?" "Experience," he said simply. She studied him, the quiet man who scrubbed blood off tile but spoke like he'd carried bodies out of fire. He didn't meet her eyes, just looked down the corridor. "In the field," he added softly, "when you lose someone, you still have to move your hands. Otherwise, they remember." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. He stood, ready to leave. "Wait," she called after him. "What were you before this?" Eli paused. "A medic," he said. "Now I just clean what's left." Later that night, he found a small puddle of dried blood outside the ICU door. He crouched down, spraying disinfectant in slow circles. It wasn't about the stain. It was about what people left behind when they couldn't carry it anymore. A nurse asked softly, "Why bother? Nobody sees it." Eli's voice was calm. "That's why I do it." Near dawn, Lena found him again, mopping near the glass wall that looked out at the sleeping city. "You really don't talk much, do you?" she said. He smiled. "Words are loud. Floors remember better." She laughed weakly, the first sound of relief since her patient's death. Eli kept working, the mop swaying like a pendulum between grief and peace. "Do you ever get used to it?" she asked. "To losing people?" He stopped, leaned on the handle, eyes distant. "No. You just learn to lose quieter." The sun began to rise, soft, pale, spilling across the linoleum. Lena watched as the light touched his face, the soldier's posture, the janitor's patience, the faint exhaustion of a man who'd seen too much but still chose to stay. "You're not just cleaning," she said suddenly. "You're remembering." Eli looked up at the morning sky beyond the window. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to make sure the next person walks into something clean. He pushed the mop forward one last time, a quiet act of devotion that no one would ever record. That morning, as the day shift began to pour in, laughter, coffee cups, the noise of normalcy, Eli Turner faded into the background like he always did. But for the first time, someone noticed. Lena watched him go, her hands no longer shaking. And in that silence, between a soldier and a doctor, something wordless passed. Not love, not pity, but recognition. He was the man who needed no witness, because the work itself was witness enough. The storm arrived without warning. Thunder rolled across the city like artillery fire, and Saint Helena trembled beneath the weight of it. Power flickered once, twice, and then the lights went out. Only the heartbeat of machines filled the dark. Monitors glowed red, ventilators hissed. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse screamed for help. Lena Cruz ran through the corridor, her shoes splashing in the rain that leaked from the ceiling vents. "Generators down!" someone shouted. "Room 12! Cardiac arrest!" She burst into the room. A man lay motionless on the table. The monitor was flat. The defibrillator was dead. "Where's the backup?" she cried. "Technical's on the way," a nurse answered, voice shaking. Her hands trembled as she began compressions. 1, 2, 3. But her rhythm faltered. She'd never done it alone before. Sweat stung her eyes. Panic rose like a tide. That was when the door opened. Eli Turner stepped in, soaked, calm, carrying a flashlight. He said nothing. Just placed the light between his teeth and came to her side. "Keep count," he said quietly. "What?" "Count," out loud. His voice anchored her. The world shrank to the sound of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Eli pressed his palms over hers, steadying the pace. "Not too fast," he murmured. "Let the heart listen." Rain hammered the windows. The emergency light blinked red and white, like a dying pulse refusing to quit. Lena's voice cracked. "I can't." "Yes, you can," he said. "You already are." For 20 endless seconds, there was nothing. Then, a chirp. A faint, impossible sound. The monitor flickered, a weak line trembling to life. Lena gasped. "He's back!" Eli's shoulders sagged. He sat down hard on the floor, breathing like he'd run a mile. For the first time, she saw it. The weariness that never left his face. The weight of all the ghosts behind his calm. The lights snapped on. The hum of machines returned. The storm outside raged, but the room had gone still. A nurse whispered, "Who the hell is he?" Lena looked at Eli. He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, the faintest smile breaking through the exhaustion. "Just the janitor," he said. Later, in the quiet after the storm, Lena found him again, in the maintenance hall, sitting beside a mop bucket, hands trembling slightly. "You saved him," she said. He shook his head. "We saved him. You just needed someone to hold the fear steady." She studied him. "You've done this before, haven't you?" He didn't deny it. "In the army," he said softly. "We called it the silence, that moment before someone either comes back or doesn't. You learn to live in that moment. You learn not to flinch." Her throat tightened. "And if they don't come back?" Eli looked at his hands, scarred and raw. "Then you make sure the next one does." They sat in silence. Water dripped from the ceiling. The smell of bleach filled the air. Lena glanced at his ID badge. "Why are you here, Eli? You could be a medic again. A nurse. Anything." He smiled faintly. I used to think saving lives meant fighting death. Now I think it's about cleaning up what death leaves behind. You mean the floors? She asked, half teasing. He nodded. The floors, the hands, the people. Outside, dawn crept in, pale and trembling. The rain had stopped. The city glistened like something newly forgiven. As they walked back toward the ward, Lena turned to him. What do you think happens when the world stops noticing people like you? He shrugged. That's when you find out who you really are. She stopped. And who are you, Eli Turner? He looked at the hallway they had cleaned together, the reflection of light spreading across the tile like water. I'm the man who stays after the noise is over, he said. That morning, as the day shift arrived, a few nurses whispered about what had happened. The janitor who brought a man back from the dead. Some laughed it off. Others stayed silent. Lena didn't say a word. But when she passed him in the hall, she nodded once, a silent salute. He returned it. Barely a motion, but enough. In his locker, Eli replaced his wet gloves and found the drawing his son had made, the one with the crooked words, "My dad keeps the world clean." He smiled, folded it neatly, and whispered, "One more breath, kid. Just one more." That night, when the storm was finally gone, Lena found a single note left on the counter near the break room. It wasn't signed, but she knew who it was from. Some stains aren't meant to disappear. They remind us someone fought here. She pressed it to her chest, eyes glistening. Somewhere down the hall, she heard the soft sound of a mop moving. Steady, patient, almost like a heartbeat that refused to stop. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It wasn't violent anymore, just constant, as if the sky couldn't stop remembering. Saint Helena sat beneath it like a ship adrift, its corridors gleaming with the residue of everything that had survived the night before. Eli Turner walked those halls with the same rhythm as always. Mop, bucket, silence. But now, when he passed, people looked up. Nurses nodded. Doctors paused mid-step. Even the security guard at the front desk greeted him by name. He didn't want that. Recognition was noise, and he'd learned long ago that noise made your hands shake. Still, Lena Cruz found him near the ICU, checking the floor drain. She hesitated, then said, "You saved a man's life, Eli." He didn't look up. "You did the work. I just kept the light steady." That's not true. He wrung the mop once. Doesn't matter what's true. What matters is, he's breathing. There was no defense against that kind of simplicity. Later that afternoon, the wind picked up again. Power flickered. A low rumble echoed through the vents, a sound no one wanted to hear so soon after the blackout. Lena found him again by the generator room, flashlight in hand. "You don't have to do this," she said. He gave her a small smile. "Storms like me. They always find their way back." She followed him inside. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Wires hissed. Water dripped from the ceiling. Eli crouched by the main control panel, sleeves rolled up, muscles tense under the wet fabric. "You were in the Army, weren't you?" Lena asked. "Field medic, 3rd Battalion," he said, tightening a bolt. "What made you leave?" He paused. Silence. Too many people stopped breathing. I wanted to hear what peace sounded like. Lena's voice softened. "And did you?" He smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I'm getting closer." A thunderclap shook the building. The lights flickered again. A pipe burst overhead, sending water down like rain inside a storm. Eli reached up instinctively, shielding the electrical box with his jacket and packing gauze along a wet edge to wick the moisture away. He swapped a blown fuse from the panel's spare kit, a motion too practiced to be lucky, and held steady until the hiss calmed. When the maintenance team arrived minutes later, they found him sitting on the floor, soaked, a thin cut across his hand. He looked up at them and said quietly, "It's stable now. Keep it that way." Lena pressed a towel against his wound, shaking her head. "You could have been electrocuted." "I've been hit by worse things," he said. "Don't make jokes. You scared me." He looked at her then, really looked. "You'll be fine. I meant you, Eli." He smiled, the kind of smile that says I've already been where you're afraid to go. That night, the hospital calmed again. Outside, the storm moved east, leaving behind a sky torn open by stars. Lena brought him coffee. He was sitting by the emergency doors, staring at the rain-slick parking lot. "I checked the records," she said softly. "The man we saved, his name was Caleb Jensen. He served in the army, too." Eli's eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, I knew him. His brother didn't make it home." "So you knew?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes the world brings the same souls back to you until you do it right." Lena's throat tightened. "You think that's what happened last night?" Eli leaned back, gaze distant. "I think life keeps giving you chances to pay your debts. Mine just happened to wear hospital gowns." She watched him for a long time after that, the way he folded the cleaning cloth with precision, the quiet patience in every motion. "Why do you always stay after the shift ends?" she asked. He glanced up. "Because someone has to see the place before it wakes, to make sure the night didn't leave any ghosts behind." He stood, gathering his tools. "People forget," he added. "Hospitals keep the living alive, but the dead leave fingerprints. I just make sure they fade." Near dawn, a nurse rushed through the hall. "Turner, room 7! That patient's crashing!" Eli dropped his mop and ran. By the time he reached the room, the team was already there. Lena was leading the charge. Steady hands, sharp voice, no hesitation. He stood at the door, watching, ready. Her eyes met his briefly, and in that split second she saw what he'd given her. Calm under fire, rhythm under fear. The line on the monitor jumped. The patient gasped, choking on air. Lena exhaled, whispering, "We got him." Eli smiled. Quiet, proud, then slipped away before anyone could thank him. When she found him later in the maintenance hall, he was cleaning his hands, staring at the faint scar on his wrist. "Caleb woke up," she said. "He's asking for you." Eli shook his head. "He won't remember me, right? You saved his life." He looked at her. "I didn't save him. I just gave him back the chance to find someone who will." There was nothing she could say to that. As the first light touched the hospital windows, Lena walked past the janitor's closet and noticed the door slightly ajar. Inside, hanging neatly, was his apron. Next to it, a note in the same quiet handwriting she'd come to recognize: "Storms end when they're ready. Until then, someone has to keep the lights on. E.T." She smiled, the kind of smile that hurts and heals at once. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, gold spilling across the freshly mopped floor. It gleamed so bright she could almost see her reflection. And behind it, for just a second, the faint outline of a man standing tall in a navy apron, watching the dawn. The storm had ended, but the hospital still sounded like rain. Drips, monitors, whispered prayers, the soft rhythm of survival echoing through Saint Helena's halls. Eli Turner moved through it like part of the architecture. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. He simply was. A presence so constant that people forgot the silence had a name. His mop left faint trails of water behind him, catching morning light like glass veins. He paused by the ICU door where the patient, Caleb Jensen, now breathed on his own. Lena stood inside, adjusting the chart. When she saw Eli, she smiled. "He's going to live." Eli nodded once. "Good. You're not going in?" "No need. He's in the right hands now." She wanted to say thank you, but she knew he didn't want that word. Gratitude made the work smaller somehow. So instead she said, "We could use another set of hands during rounds." Eli smiled faintly. "Mine are spoken for." That afternoon, while everyone else ate lunch, he repaired a broken IV stand, fixed a flickering light in the neonatal ward, and quietly handed a sandwich to a nurse who hadn't eaten since dawn. No one asked him why. They all started doing the same. One evening, a new intern panicked during a trauma call, shaking too hard to hold the scalpel. Eli, passing by, said only, "Steady hands, Doc. Fear burns more energy than blood loss." The intern took a breath. The cut was clean. The patient lived. Later, the intern found him mopping the corridor and whispered, "Thank you." Eli replied without looking up, "Just cleaning up after you." Lena began to notice it everywhere, the ripple effect of one man's quiet discipline. Nurses spoke softer. Doctors stayed an extra minute after shifts to check on patients. Even the janitorial staff walked with a kind of pride. It was as if Eli had mopped not just the floors, but something invisible in everyone's chest. One nurse said it best, "When he's here, even the air feels cleaner." That night, Lena found him outside by the loading dock, watching the rainwater drain into the street. "You ever stop working?" she asked. He shrugged. "If I stop, things get loud." "Inside your head?" He didn't answer. She sat beside him on a crate, their shoulders almost touching. "Eli," she said gently, "why do you stay? You could leave, start over somewhere else." He looked toward the horizon, the faint reflection of city lights trembling on wet pavement. "Because leaving doesn't fix what broke," he said. "Sometimes you just have to stay until the noise quiets down." She studied him. "Is that what you're doing here? Fixing what broke?" He smiled, sad and kind. "Trying to." In the early hours before dawn, a code blue echoed through the intercom again. Lena ran. So did Eli. This time it was a child, a girl no older than 6. Her small chest rose once, then stilled. The doctor hesitated. Everyone froze. Eli stepped forward, calm as ritual. "Count," he said. The nurse blinked. "What?" "Count. Don't think. Just count." He took the compressions, rhythm steady, voice low and firm. 1, 2, 3. Not the same girl from the first night. Another child, another hour, because hospitals test you in different ways. The heart monitor flickered. Once, twice. A faint beep broke through the static. The nurse gasped. Lena covered her mouth. "She's back," Eli said, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't stop now." When it was over, Lena found him washing his hands in the hallway sink, shoulders trembling. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded, but his reflection in the mirror said otherwise. "I keep wondering," he murmured, "how many times you get to borrow someone's heartbeat before you start losing your own." She touched his arm. "Maybe that's not loss. Maybe it's just how you love people." He looked at her then, the weight in his eyes shifting, softening. "Love doesn't save them," he said. "No," she replied, "but it saves you." For the first time, he didn't argue. By morning, word had spread again. The janitor had saved another child. This time, no one laughed. The hospital felt different, reverent, even. A nurse left a cup of cocoa on his cart. Someone wrote, "Thank you, Turner," on the staff bulletin board. Lena saw him glance at it once, then quietly erase it. Later, she asked why. He said, "Names fade. Clean floors last longer." That night, as he clocked out, the intercom played soft music. Someone had left the PA on. A gentle hum, almost like a lullaby. Eli paused in the empty corridor. The lights were dim, the air warm. He looked down at the floor, spotless, glowing, reflecting his silhouette perfectly. For a moment, he could almost see his wife there beside him, holding their newborn, smiling through exhaustion. He whispered, "I'm still trying, love." Then he turned off the light. The next morning, Lena walked into the hospital and found a small drawing taped to the janitor's closet door. A child's crayon sketch of a man with a mop, standing under a shining sun. At the bottom were shaky letters, "My dad keeps the world clean." She smiled through tears, whispering, "You really do, Eli." Night folded over St. Helena again. Outside, the city dripped with leftover rain, the streets shining like memory. Inside, the hospital pulsed in quiet rhythm. Machines breathing, lights humming, people sleeping because someone else stayed awake. Eli Turner sat alone in the staff break room, elbows on knees, a paper cup of cocoa between his hands. The sleeves of his navy apron were rolled up over his faded green coveralls, revealing forearms cut with old scars, stories that no one had asked him to tell. He wasn't thinking, just listening, to the faint tick of the clock, the soft rumble of air vents, the kind of silence that soldiers both crave and fear. The door opened softly. Lena stepped in, still in her white coat, hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes. "You're still here," she said. He smiled faintly. "Storm's quiet now. I just like making sure it stays that way." She sat across from him. The chair creaked. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and tiredness. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "You already did," he replied. "Not for that," she said. "For staying. For not walking away like the rest." Eli looked into the cup, the cocoa almost cold. "Walking's easy when you don't have to look back." Lena tilted her head. "And what's behind you, Eli?" For a moment he didn't answer, then quietly, "A delivery room. A woman in labor. Too much blood. Not enough time." Lena's throat tightened. "Your wife." He nodded. "They said they could save one. She chose our son." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of ghosts. Eli's voice came low, rough around the edges. "I stayed through the funeral, through the condolences, through everyone telling me how brave she was. Then I couldn't stand the sound of people breathing. So I joined the army. Thought maybe I could learn how to keep hearts beating for once." He exhaled, long and heavy. "Turns out death doesn't care how steady your hands are." Lena whispered, "You kept others alive, though." 47, he said. Then 48. That's the one I lost. After that, I stopped counting. His fingers tightened around the cup. When I came home, I didn't know where to go. Couldn't stand hospitals. Too many machines pretending to be hearts. But this place... He looked around. Saint Helena needed someone to clean up after the miracles. That felt about right. Lena leaned forward, voice soft. "You call what you do cleaning, but that's not what it is." He raised an eyebrow. "You're still saving people, Eli. Just quieter." He smiled at that, the first true smile she'd seen from him. "Maybe." Or maybe I just wipe the floor so the next miracle doesn't trip. She laughed, the sound gentle in the sterile air. Then her face sobered. You ever think about leaving? Every night? And? Then I remember. My boy's drawing. My dad keeps the world clean. Makes it hard to quit. Lena nodded slowly. You're raising him alone? Yeah. My mother helps. He's 6. Thinks I'm a superhero with a mop. She smiled. He's not wrong. He shook his head. Superheroes don't get tired like this. They sat in silence again, the kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. Lena finally asked, Does it ever get easier? Eli looked up. No. You just learn how to carry it without spilling. She breathed out, a soft laugh through tears. That's actually beautiful. It's survival, he said. Beauty comes later. Then, after a long pause, he asked, You ever lost someone? Her lips parted, but it took a moment for sound to follow. My brother, she said. Car accident. I was 16. I thought if I became a doctor, I'd make sure no one else felt that helpless. He nodded, understanding without pity. So we're both just trying to clean up after something we couldn't fix. The clock ticked on. Somewhere down the hall, a heart monitor beeped steadily, a quiet metronome of life continuing. Eli rose, stretching, joints popping faintly. Come on, Doc, get some rest. She smiled. You giving orders now? Old habit. As they stepped into the hallway, the lights dimmed to the night setting. Their reflections walked side by side on the freshly mopped floor, the soldier and the doctor, the ghosts and the living. Lena stopped. Eli? Yeah. If you ever leave, this place will forget how to breathe. He turned to her, eyes tired but warm. Then you'll have to remind it. At the end of the corridor, he picked up his cart again. The wheels squeaked softly, echoing through the silence. Lena watched him go, the faint shimmer of light following each stroke of his mop, like he was erasing something the rest of them couldn't see. She whispered to herself, He's not cleaning. He's keeping the world alive. Back in the break room, Eli checked his phone. A new message blinked from his mother. Luke says goodnight. He asked if the stars have hospitals. He smiled, tears glinting at the edge of his lashes. He typed back, Tell him yes. Some people up there are still learning how to shine. He put the phone down, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. It was nearly midnight when the phone rang. Not the hospital line, his personal one. The screen glowed faintly. Mom. Eli Turner's hand hesitated before answering. He was in the basement corridor, checking a flickering light, the quiet hum of the hospital his only company. Hey, Ma. Her voice trembled. It's Luke. He's running a fever. I've tried everything. Eli straightened. How high? 103. He keeps calling your name. For a second, the corridor disappeared. He could hear only his heartbeat. That heavy, rhythmic sound soldiers never forget. I'll come, he said. I'll be there soon. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, and stood still for a long moment, listening to the rain hammering the roof. When he turned, Lena was there, clipboard in hand, face pale from another night with no sleep. You okay? She asked. Eli nodded automatically. Yeah, my son's sick. Her expression softened. Go, I'll cover your shift. He shook his head. There's a transfer from Mercy General arriving in 15 minutes. Cardiac trauma, short staff tonight. Eli. He looked at her then. calm, torn, unflinching. If I walk out now and something happens, I won't forgive myself. But if I stay... He trailed off. Lena's eyes filled with understanding. You'll hate yourself either way. He exhaled. That's the curse of staying alive. The ambulance siren wailed outside. Eli moved on instinct, wheeling equipment, clearing the hallway, motioning nurses into position. Rain drummed against the windows like the echo of his racing pulse. When they rolled the gurney in, the patient's skin was gray, his pulse faint. Male, 50s, heart trauma, arrested twice on the road, a paramedic barked. Get a crash cart, Lena ordered. Eli was already there, positioning the pads, checking the line. The defibrillator beeped, once, then failed. Backup's dead, the nurse cried. Eli popped the cover, replaced a blown fuse from the emergency spare, and dabbed a damp contact dry with sterile gauze. The monitor flared back to life. Clear! Shock. Flatline. Another shock. Then, a flicker. The patient gasped, coughed, grabbed at air. Lena's voice broke. We've got him! But Eli didn't hear her. He was staring at his phone on the counter and vibrating again. A missed call, then another. His breath caught. The world tilted. Lena touched his arm. Go. We're good here. He nodded, stripped off his gloves, and, after telling the charge nurse he'd step out once the patient stabilized, walked out. Not running, just moving fast, the way soldiers do when the world's ending again. Outside, the rain had thinned to a whisper. He climbed into his old truck, hands shaking, keys slipping twice before the engine started. The wipers cut through the dark, the road gleaming with light from passing ambulances. He drove through puddles and memory. The hum of helicopter rotors, the scream of monitors, his wife's voice whispering, "Save him first." He whispered back now, "I'm trying." When he reached his mother's house, the porch light was on. Luke was asleep on the couch, cheeks flushed, a cool towel on his forehead. His mother sat beside him, knitting something small and blue, the kind of peace only old hands can make. He just fell asleep, she said. Doctor said it's viral. He'll be fine. Eli sank into a chair, shoulders trembling from exhaustion and relief. His mother studied him quietly. You look thinner. He smiled weakly. Floors don't mop themselves. She sighed. You're working too much again. He looked at Luke, the soft rise and fall of his breathing, and whispered, I'm just trying to earn what she gave me. His mother reached over, squeezing his hand. You already did. At dawn, he returned to the hospital. Lena was still awake, her white coat draped over a chair, her eyes shadowed but calm. You made it back, she said. Wouldn't miss rounds. She handed him a cup of cocoa. How's Luke? Better, he said softly, sleeping like he's never been sick. They stood together in the quiet hallway. The air smelled like coffee, antiseptic, and rain. Eli, Lena said, you can't keep choosing between saving others and saving yourself. He looked at her, tired but steady. I don't, he said. I just keep choosing who needs me more right now. Later that morning, Caleb Jensen, the soldier Eli had saved, stopped him by the window. I remember you, Caleb said. You pulled me back. Eli shook his head. No, you walked back. I just pointed the way. Caleb smiled faintly. Still, you were there when I couldn't see. Eli hesitated, then said softly, We all need someone to stand watch when we fall asleep. When the shift ended, Lena found Eli in the children's ward. Luke's drawing, the one with the crooked sun, was pinned to the notice board. Underneath it, someone had written in neat handwriting, "He keeps the lights on." Lena turned to him. "Did you put that there?" He shook his head. "Maybe the floor did." They laughed quietly. For a while they stood together, watching the morning light spill across the floor. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, everything breathed easier, even the silence. That night, before leaving, Eli stopped by the ICU one last time. The machines hummed softly. Caleb slept. Eli rested a hand on the doorframe and whispered, "One more day." He looked up at the ceiling, the same ceiling he'd stared at when he first walked into Saint Helena years ago, and closed his eyes. "Still here," he murmured. And somewhere deep in the building, a generator hummed to life, steady and strong, as if answering him. The night was quieter than usual. No storms, no sirens. Only the low hum of machines breathing steady and sure, the sound of a hospital at peace. But inside the janitor's closet, another world waited. Rows of cleaning supplies, the soft smell of disinfectant, and a small wooden box, worn smooth by time. Eli Turner opened it with care, as if it were alive. Inside lay a notebook, leather cracked, edges curled, pages yellowed with sweat and years. He sat on the stool, the light above him faint and trembling, and turned the first page. There were names, written in careful block letters. Each line carried a date, a note, a memory. Number 1, Private Harrison, age 19. Said he'd buy his mom a car. Hampered 12. Lieutenant Pierce, age 26. Kept singing through the morphine. 48. S. Klein, 32. Didn't make it. My fault. He touched that last name for a long time. The ink had bled slightly. Rain or tears. He couldn't remember which. The door creaked open. "Eli." Lena stood in the doorway, hesitant, a faint smile trying to disguise the curiosity in her eyes. "I knocked," she said. He closed the book halfway. "Bad habit of leaving doors unlocked." She stepped in, glanced at the open pages. "Is that?" He nodded. "Everyone I ever worked on. The ones who made it. And the ones who didn't." Her voice lowered. "Why keep it?" He stared at the page, tracing one of the names with his thumb. Because forgetting them felt worse than losing them. Lena sat on the edge of the supply cart, her voice gentle. "I thought soldiers were told to move on." "Yeah," he said softly. "But no one tells you how." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the hallway outside filled the space like distant wind. She looked at him. "How many did you save?" 47, he said. Then quieter. 48 didn't make it. That's why I never stopped counting. He hesitated, then added, "The man who died, his name was Klein. He told me once, if I don't make it, make sure you do something good with what's left." He smiled faintly, eyes distant. "So I mop floors." Lena shook her head. "You do more than that." He met her gaze, tired and warm. "Maybe. But this is what keeps my hands steady. The world doesn't need more soldiers. It needs someone to remember them." Later that night, Lena wandered into the chapel at the far end of Saint Helena. It was empty except for the soft candlelight flickering against glass. She opened her notebook and wrote quietly, "He remembers their names, so the world can forget the pain." When she looked up, Eli was standing at the door, as if drawn there by the silence itself. "You keep journals too?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "Words help me breathe." Same reason I clean. He sat beside her in the pew. The candlelight flickered between them like a pulse. Eli, she said, you can't carry them all forever. He nodded. I know, but until someone else remembers, I'll keep their names safe. The next day, Lena passed by his closet again. The door was open. On the wall above the mop rack, something new hung there, pinned carefully, aligned with soldier's precision. A sheet of white paper with a single heading, Saint Helena, saved. Beneath it, a list of names, not soldiers this time, but patients. Caleb Jensen, the little girl from room 7, an elderly woman who had once held his hand in thanks, and at the bottom, Lena's own name, written in small, careful handwriting. She blinked, speechless. Why me? Eli was mopping the floor nearby. He didn't look up. You were breaking that night after you lost your patient, he said. Then you didn't break again. Her throat tightened. Eli, that's not... He cut her off gently. It counts. Saving someone isn't always about restarting a heart. That evening, the two of them stood by the ICU window, watching the city turn gold beneath the setting sun. Lena said quietly, You ever think about what happens after all this? Eli's reflection in the glass looked older somehow, like a man halfway between worlds. After what? He asked. When you're done, cleaning? He smiled faintly. Then I'll finally rest. Where? Doesn't matter. As long as the floor's clean when I go. She turned to him, eyes bright with tears. You say that like a prayer. He nodded. Maybe it is. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, she found the notebook still open on his desk. A new line had been added. Not a number, but a title on a fresh page. Saint Helena, saved. Still breathing. She smiled and closed the book. At dawn, Eli walked through the corridors once more. The lights above flickered, reflecting in his tired eyes. He touched the walls, the doors, the rails, like a soldier saying goodbye to his post. When Lena found him in the cafeteria hours later, he was standing by the window watching the sunrise. You're early, she said. Couldn't sleep, he replied. Too quiet. Quiet's good, he smiled. Not for people like me. Quiet means memory. She studied him. So what do you do with it? Try to make it gentle. They stood there as the first light poured into the hospital, touching the floors he'd cleaned, the rooms he'd saved, the lives he'd mended without a single scalpel. That morning, when he finally returned to his closet, he placed the notebook back into the wooden box and locked it. Then he whispered, Rest easy, boys. You're all home now. And for the first time in years, he smiled, not because something had been cleaned, but because something inside him finally had. The sun had not yet risen when the call came. Eli Turner was sitting by the hospital window, watching the first line of light break through the mist. The corridors behind him were empty. Even silence needed rest sometimes. His phone buzzed once, twice. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then, a quiet voice. Mr. Turner, this is Captain Reeves, Veterans Affairs. We'd like to talk about your service. He froze, the air tightening around him. I'm not in service anymore, he said. With respect, sir, Reeves continued, we reviewed your file. The civilians you saved during Operation Halcyon. It's being reconsidered for a Federal Valor Commendation. We'd like you to attend the ceremony. Eli closed his eyes. Why now? Because it's time people know what you did. He looked out at the pale horizon. What I did, he said quietly, wasn't enough. Then he ended the call. When he turned, Lena was standing a few steps away holding a clipboard. "You're getting medals now?" she teased softly, trying to read his face. He didn't smile. "They dig up ghosts when they run out of heroes. Maybe they just want to say thank you. Then they're late." She studied him. "You're not proud of what you did?" "I'm proud they lived," he said. "That's all." Lena hesitated. "You can't keep hiding from the light, Eli." He looked at her, tired but gentle. "Light doesn't heal everyone, Doc. Some of us belong in the shadows. That's where the hurt people are." Later that morning, the story spread. Someone from administration had overheard the call. By noon, the hospital staff were whispering, "The janitor's a war hero. He saved civilians under fire. Why didn't he ever tell us?" Eli ignored it all. He scrubbed, wiped, polished, same as always. But every time he looked up, eyes followed him. Admiration where invisibility used to be. And for a man who'd spent years learning how to disappear, attention felt like a wound reopening. Lena found him that night in the chapel, the one he'd never entered before. He stood by the candles, staring at the small golden light trembling against the glass. "You didn't come to rounds today," she said softly. "Didn't want to be stared at." "They're proud of you." He smiled faintly. "They were proud yesterday too. They just didn't know it." Lena stepped closer. "You can't punish yourself for being seen." He turned, eyes tired. "You think this—" He gestured at the candles, the folded papers, the sterile perfection. "Is forgiveness? It's not. It's maintenance. That's all I know how to do." She reached for his hand. "Then maintain something for yourself. Just once." He didn't pull away. "What do you want me to do?" "Accept the medal." He shook his head. "The dead don't need ceremonies. They need peace." "Maybe the living do," she said. The next evening, he received another call. Captain Reeves again. "Mr. Turner, the department insists. They've already announced the award. A reporter will contact you." Eli's jaw tightened. "Don't." "Sir, you don't have a choice." He hung up. He sat in the empty corridor, elbows on his knees, breathing through the ache that memory brings. The faces came back. The soldiers, the cries, the desert air, the one he couldn't save. The noise built until he pressed his palms against his ears, whispering, "Stop." A hand touched his shoulder. Lena. She didn't speak, just sat beside him until the tremor faded. He finally said, "I don't want to be remembered for killing or saving. I just want to be someone who stayed." Lena looked at him, her eyes wet. "You already are." A week later, the letter arrived. Embossed seal, formal tone, words like honor, service, sacrifice. He read it once, then folded it back neatly and slipped it into the wooden box, next to his notebook of names. 2 worlds touching but never mixing. That night, he cleaned the ICU floor with slower strokes than usual. Each reflection of light on tile looked like a medal already earned. Quiet, undeserved, beautiful. The next morning, Lena found a note taped to his locker. "No ceremonies, no uniforms. The world doesn't need to remember me. It needs to remember kindness." She read it twice, her throat tightening. When she went looking for him, she found him in the children's ward, fixing a broken mobile above a baby's crib. "You're avoiding fame, huh?" she said gently. He smiled. "It's easier to fix things that don't know my name." She laughed quietly. "You really believe staying invisible is noble?" He met her eyes. "No, but it keeps me honest. That night, the reporter showed up anyway. She found him in the hallway, mop in hand. "Mr. Turner? People would love to hear your story." He paused, then said, "They already are. They just don't know it's mine." And he walked away. At dawn, Lena entered the chapel again. On the altar, someone had placed a folded metal ribbon, navy blue, untouched, gleaming in the soft light. Next to it was a handwritten note. "Give this to the next nurse who thinks she's not enough. E.T." She smiled through her tears. "You stubborn man." When she stepped into the corridor, she saw him far down the hall, pushing his cart toward the glass doors where the morning sun was rising. The light caught him, wrapping him in gold, and for a fleeting moment he looked less like a janitor, more like a soldier walking out of a war that finally ended. The doors opened, the air was bright, and for the first time, he didn't shield his eyes. The morning began in silence. No alarms, no codes, no shouting through hallways, just the hum of machines, the whisper of fresh air through the vents, and the pale gold light spilling over Saint Helena's polished floors. It was the kind of morning that felt like forgiveness. Eli Turner stood by the window in the janitor's closet, hands folded over the edge of his mop handle. He could hear the world waking, nurses greeting each other, carts rolling, a distant laugh from the children's ward. The hospital was alive. And for the first time, he realized he didn't need to be. On the shelf beside him lay the small wooden box. Inside, the notebook of names, the letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the medal he had refused. He ran a thumb across the medal once. It caught the light, the way dawn catches water. Then he closed the lid gently, as though tucking in an old friend. A knock on the door. "Come in," he said softly. Lena stepped inside, holding 2 cups of cocoa. "You never take a morning off, do you?" He smiled. "I do now." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, eyes quiet, certain. "I'm leaving, Lena. Saint Helena doesn't need me anymore." Her breath caught. "Leaving? You can't. You're part of this place." He shook his head. "That's the point. A good janitor never leaves a mess behind, and this place, it's clean now." They walked together down the corridor. Every light that flickered above them reflected across the waxed floor, creating a trail of gold. A path that seemed to follow him, not led him. As they passed, nurses paused. Doctors nodded. Even patients in wheelchairs turned their heads, as if some quiet current passed through the air. The hospital had learned to breathe again. And somewhere, deep in its heart, Eli's presence lingered like a steady pulse. Lena asked quietly, "Where will you go?" He smiled. "Home. Luke starts school next week. He deserves mornings." They stopped at the children's ward. On the notice board still hung Luke's drawing. "My dad keeps the world clean." The paper was wrinkled now, edges curling, but it seemed brighter somehow, as if it had absorbed the light of every dawn that had passed since. A little girl, the one he had saved weeks ago, came running up with a crayon in her hand. "Mr. Eli, look," she said, showing him a drawing of her own, 2 stick figures holding hands beneath a big red sun. "Who's that?" he asked gently. "That's you and the doctor," she giggled. "You're saving people." He laughed softly, tears catching in his eyes. "Guess I did, huh?" Lena knelt beside the girl. "You gave her back her heartbeat," she whispered. Eli looked down at the child's bright eyes. "No," he said. "She gave me back mine." As he turned to go, a voice called out from behind. It was the head nurse, holding a small envelope. "You forgot this." He frowned. "What is it?" "Your resignation letter. We can't find it." He smiled. "Didn't write one." "Then how will we know you're gone?" He paused, glancing around the hall. The clean tiles, the faint scent of lemon disinfectant, the reflection of light that danced across the floor. "You'll know," he said, "when it stays clean without me." They reached the entrance doors. Outside, the sky blazed soft gold, a morning so new it felt untouched. Eli turned to Lena one last time. "You'll keep them steady?" he asked. She nodded. "You taught me how." He handed her his ID badge. The plastic was scratched, the name fading. Turner, E. "For the closet," he said. "So they remember who kept the lights on." She took it, voice trembling. "You sure you don't want to stay for the ceremony next week?" He shook his head. "Let them give it to someone who still needs saving." Lena swallowed hard. "You know what they'll say about you?" He smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter. Floors don't talk." He stepped outside. The air was cool, sharp, with the scent of rain and sunlight. The city spread before him, rooftops shining, cars glinting, clouds drifting like slow ships through the sky. He stood there for a long moment, the sunlight climbing his face, his shoulders. Behind him, through the glass doors, the hospital glowed. A nurse laughed. A monitor beeped. Life, bright, relentless, beautiful, went on. Later that morning, Lena returned to his closet. It was empty. Only the wooden box remained, resting neatly on the stool. She opened it. Inside, on top of the notebook, lay a single folded note, written in that same calm, precise handwriting. "If you're reading this, then I've finally slept through sunrise. Don't be sad." The world doesn't need witnesses for kindness, just people willing to stay until the light returns. E.T. She pressed the paper to her heart, tears spilling before she could stop them. That afternoon, the janitorial staff gathered quietly in the hallway. No speeches, no ceremony, just mops, buckets, and silence. Lena stood among them, holding her cup of cocoa, watching the light ripple across the floors like a slow tide. She whispered, "He's still here." And maybe he was, because when the sun reached the far end of the hall, the same hall where he had once cleaned the blood of strangers, the light shimmered like a reflection of his presence. It lingered there, unmoving, as if the world itself paused to remember the man who stayed. That night, a new janitor began his first shift. He found a note taped to the closet wall. "Welcome to Saint Helena. If you ever lose your way, follow the light on the floor. It remembers." He smiled without knowing why. Outside, the rain began again, gentle, forgiving, endless. And somewhere in the distance, a child laughed in her sleep.